Right, everyone. Hope everyone's good. Lovely day outside today, and I thought I would get round to making this video I've wanted to make for a long time, which is about who are the GOATs of MMA. So we're going to look at every single weight division, and we're going to look at who I think is the all-time greatest. So yeah, stay tuned. We're going to go all the way through. I'll give you my all-time greatest at the end. We're going to start in weight divisions, and we are going to start with the smallest division. The smallest division is actually strawweight, but it's not a very popular division. And if you're a strawweight, I don't think you're a real person. So yeah, we're going to move to flyweight. So we'll start with flyweight. Flyweight is really easy for most people, and I'm guessing most people would agree with me on this, that the GOAT, the flyweight GOAT of MMA, is Mr. Demetrius Johnson. So DJ, one of the most dominant UFC champions ever, regardless of weight class. Crazy that the UFC shipped him off to one championship, where obviously became champion there too. Now finishing his career and retiring, but yeah, just what a mad decision. Unfortunately, the problem with the flyweight division, especially in the past, is that it just didn't get the numbers and the recognition that the heavier divisions get. So unfortunately, Demetrius Johnson he'll probably never get the credit what he deserves. But in terms of skill and technique, one of the best to ever do it. Um, when you start talking about pound for pound, um, he's right up there. Like I say, his skill, his technique. Unfortunately, being a flyweight, you just don't get that recognition what the bigger weights get. But yeah, I think most people would agree that Demetrius Johnson is the flyweight GOAT. Big shout out though to Brad Pickett, UK fighter, who does have a win. I think it was from WEC back in the early days. The WEC, what got swallowed up by the UFC, the WEC was a very, very good high level event where a lot of these smaller weights, flyweights, bantams, and feathers, uh, you know, that was basically the event for those smaller weights. So Brad beat him on there. I think it was a decision. So yeah, big shout out to Brad Pickett for beating the flyweight GOAT. Right, next up we have got the Bantamweight division. So one of my favourite fighters in the Bantamweight division is TJ Dillashaw. He's one of my favourite fighters to watch from the Bantamweights. Really love his style. I'm a big fan of the Bang Muay Thai style, and his coach being Dwayne Ludwig. So he's a great example of that style getting used in high level fights. So yeah, real big fan of TJ, and for a lot of people, TJ would be the bantamweight GOAT. But for me, like the stuff with him getting popped and stuff like that, it just kind of stops him from reaching that legendary status where I think when he got popped, it was like EPO, something that like really helps your cardio, and that's what he's known for, being able to push that high, fast pace. And I think that just gives you confidence, and a lot of striking is based on confidence. So it's like without that confidence of the doping, like would he have been able to do what he still did? Skill wise, he's got the skills. We know he's got the skills, but a lot of it comes down to that confidence. Like, have you got that confidence to pull that trigger without having that in your system? So yeah, real shame that happened. Um, so for me, he cannot take the top spot. For me, the top spot goes to Dominic Cruz. So he's my bantamweight GOAT. And I'm talking old school Dominic Cruz, so sort of early 2000s to 2016. Obviously, he made a bit of a return, but I think in his prime, those prime years up to 2016, that's what I'm sort of looking at. Uh, he's got wins over TJ, he's got wins over Faber. He also has a win over our flyweight GOAT, Demetrius Johnson. So for me, Dominic Cruz is the bantamweight GOAT, but Merab is doing some big things, and I think that, you know, in a couple of fights' time, Merab will possibly knock him off that top spot. Really like Merab, and you know, excited to see him fight again. But for me, right now, Dominic Cruz is the flyweight GOAT. Okay, let's talk about the featherweight division. So, featherweight division, some of my favourite fighters. Max Holloway, great fighter. I'd say he's probably the number one fighter for me to watch in terms of like, that's the fighter I want to watch in the featherweight division. Max Holloway, love him. Volkanovski as well, love the guy. Um, those two names are definitely very, very high on the list. So, but my number one guy for featherweight is Mr. Jose Aldo. So, obviously, Jose fought at bantamweight and featherweight. But in terms of featherweight, he was WEC champion. We talked about WEC before being sort of the big show for the smaller weight division. So he was champion on there. And he also obviously captured the UFC featherweight title before McGregor famously got him with that knockout. So unfortunately, I think your modern day fans, that moment kind of taints Aldo's career, which is sad because his career, he has had an amazing career, and obviously now he has hung the gloves up and he has retired. But I don't think, you know, the McGregor knockout is like a defining moment in McGregor's career, but I don't think it should be a defining moment in Aldo's career. I think Aldo had, you know, some fantastic wins, some fantastic performances, and I think he dominated the featherweight division for a very long time. So when we're talking about the GOATs, we're not talking about who's best now, you know, because, you know, there's many people better than Aldo now. But I think, you know, when you're talking about the GOAT, you're looking at, of all time, you're looking across the timeline, who was the best. And for me, the featherweight GOAT is Mr. Jose Aldo. Happy retirement. So now we hit the lightweight division, 70 kilos, 11 stone. So stack division, stack division. What tends to happen when you think about the weight divisions is flyweight is not as stacked, heavyweight is not as stacked. And as we get to these middle divisions, sort of lightweight and welterweight, for me are the two most stacked divisions in the UFC. So we're talking about the lightweight division. When you talk about sort of legendary fighters, one of the first fighters that comes to mind for me is Mr. BJ Penn. So, you know, absolutely amazing fighter. Unfortunately, now I think he's really suffering with problems with like CTE from the amount of fights he's had and obviously hard training and stuff like that. So, yeah, always looking for updates on that. It's pretty sad, really. I think he's really confused. He thinks his family are like have been replaced or something. It's crazy when you read the story. So it's a real shame because BJ is up there with the legends and with the GOATs. So I just wanted to give him a little mention because yeah, he is a legendary fighter, and like I say, it's a shame to see him in the state he is now. But he's definitely up there, high on that list. But for me, number one lightweight GOAT, it has to be Khabib, just because there's nobody who has been as dominant as him. You know, unbeaten, and don't get me wrong, he had some tough fights and stuff, and his style isn't the most fan friendly style, but yeah, a dominant champion, and yeah, I don't think you can deny that he is the lightweight GOAT. Makachev, though, doing, you know, for me, Makachev is a close second, probably a little bit more fan friendly in terms of finishes and how he performs in fights. But I think he's got a little bit of a way to go if he wants to catch Khabib. But yeah, weirdly enough, I actually got offered to fight Khabib many years ago. This was pre UFC for Khabib and for myself. And yeah, I was fighting on BAMA, which was a big UK show, so I couldn't I couldn't make the fight because I'd already signed to fight on Bama. But I remember getting this message: "Do you want to fight this guy, Khabib? Sambo champion or whatever?" And I was like, "All right, but I've got this fight." So I ended up winning the fight on Bama by flying triangle of all things. So imagine if I'd have done that to Khabib, I'd be the lightweight GOAT now, wouldn't I? But actually, the fight was offered when I was offered Khabib. It was at welterweight because I was a welterweight. So, but yeah, just an interesting story. But he probably would have squashed me like everyone else. Right now we get to welterweight. So welterweight was my division. I fought most of my career at welterweight. I fought in the UFC at welterweight, and yeah, for me it's the most stacked division. I think that welterweight is the most stacked division uh, in the UFC. So and in MMA altogether. But yeah, lots of fighters, lots of welterweight fighters that I love. Nick Diaz, Nick Diaz, what a legend! Just a real shame how things turned out. All your modern MMA fans, they're all big, Nate Diaz fans. Nate Diaz was the guy, but back in the day, it was all about Nick. Nick was the man, and yeah, I used to love watching him fight. Yeah, but doesn't make the GOAT status, unfortunately. Um, in terms of the top fighters, I think Matt Hughes was right up there. He had that wrestling style, ground and pound style, really entertaining. Had some great fights. You had this great era where you had like Hughes, Matt Serra, and then of course the man himself, GSP, George St. Pierre. So for me, the welterweight GOAT is George St. Pierre, and I think most people would agree this. The two losses he lost to Matt Serra and he lost to Matt Hughes, and he managed to avenge both of those losses. Obviously retired, came back and beat our guy Michael Bisping as well. Would have been great to see Bisping beat him, but for me, GSP is the GOAT. Super intelligent fighter. I think the highest sort of fight IQ and a very good man, outside. And I know we're talking about who's the greatest fighter, so you've got to sort of separate the fighter and the man. But for me, he's a great man, a great martial artist, and he could fight as well. So yeah, for me, GSP, he's the one. But big shout out, and I just saw this video as well before I made this to Dan Hardy, because Dan Hardy, UK fighter Dan Hardy, did 5 rounds with GSP, and yeah, he got stuck in a Kimura, I remember, and the video I just saw is when he got armbarred. GSP armbarred him. He was stuck in an armbar and he managed to tough it out and get out. So yeah, big props to Dan Hardy for going 5 rounds with the welterweight GOAT. Okay, now we step up to middleweight, so 84 kilos, which is 13 stone 3 if you're working them numbers, 185 pounds. So again, this is a division where I think most people would agree who the GOAT is, and that is Mr. Anderson Silva. Um, Obviously, his career went on a little bit longer than it should have, and we forgive you about the Jake Paul thing. Yeah, if only Anderson, if Anderson would have retired in like 2012, something like that, and avoided all them sort of losses later in his career, his stock would have been even higher. But I think even still, with all the losses at the end of his career, I still think that Anderson is the middleweight GOAT. Um, yeah, some amazing performances. That crazy sort of Matrix style striking. Sort of the closest we've come to that now is probably Adesanya. I'd say Adesanya is right up there as a close second. So yeah, Adesanya's got that similar style. Adesanya is the modern day Anderson Silva, if you like. But I think yeah, in terms of GOAT status, it has to be Anderson Silva. And again, another shout out to a UK fighter. Big up Mr. Michael Bisping for beating the champ. I was actually there. A bit of a crazy crazy fight how it went with the knockdown and the end of the round and all that business. But yeah, big shout out to Michael Bisping for beating the middleweight GOAT. So now we're looking at the light heavyweight division. So 205 pounds or 93 kilograms. So this is where the light heavyweight division has always been an exciting division because you've got the sort of athleticism and fast movements of the lighter weights, but then you've got the power of the heavyweights. So always been an exciting division. I remember back in the day, it was Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, Vanderlei Silva, all these guys were just absolute beasts. Very exciting. Probably the most exciting division, at least back in the day, that got people really into watching fight. And I think, seeing these guys fight was the reason why a lot of people sort of bought into the UFC and became UFC and MMA fans, because they saw the Tito, they saw the Chuck Liddell, and their rivalry as well, which was a big thing. So yeah, really exciting division. But again, I think there is no question, no doubt who the GOAT is of the light heavyweight division, and that is John Jones. Regardless of him getting popped for the picograms or whatever, and his drunk driving and drug taking and all this business, what he gets up to outside of MMA, which I don't like none of that, and we'll talk about this shortly when we talk about the greatest of all time across all weight divisions. But yeah, you've got to put that aside just for this. Yeah, there's been nobody more dominant. Obviously fighting at heavyweight as well. But yeah, in terms of light heavyweight, definitely the GOAT. And will we get to see him fight Aspinall? I really, really hope that fight of Aspinall comes off. It just seems that Bones is not interested. And yeah, it's kind of not part of his legacy, if you like. So yeah, we'll see. But definitely light heavyweight, Johnny Bones is the GOAT. Right, now we're on the big boys. So the heavyweight division. So we're talking 120 kilograms is the limit, so 265 pounds. Some of these heavyweights are actually cutting weight to get to that weight division, which is crazy. People like Brock Lesnar and stuff having to cut down. So yeah, these are some big dudes. Lots of exciting heavyweights. Cain Velasquez, obviously, recently been incarcerated. A lot of people obviously wanted to see him walk free, me included. But yeah, I'm sure he's got lots of people's support, even though he's in jail. Stipe, another great fighter. Tom Aspinall, the new champ. Again, we talked about him fighting Jones. But for me, all these modern day fighters do not compare to the one true heavyweight MMA GOAT, and that is Fedor Emelianenko. So he never fought in the UFC, and that's probably the biggest kind of black mark on his resume, is that he never came across and he was never sort of tested in the UFC. It would have been amazing to see a super fight with him and Randy Couture back in the day. When Randy was champ, that was kind of when they was talking about him coming over. But I believe because Fedor was very influential and a big part of like the Russian Sambo Federation, he's competing in Sambo every year. He was like a big, how can we say it, like a big ambassador for Sambo in Russia. He wanted to keep doing that and fight MMA, and the UFC would not allow him. What the UFC didn't want is, imagine Fedor wins the title and then he gets beat in like some Sambo competition, and it kind of makes him look bad. So because they didn't want that, apparently, this is what I'm told, apparently that's why he never signed with the UFC. But he did have some big fights. He had a massive career. Most of his fights obviously being in Japan, but yeah, a great career. And yeah, I used to love how just relaxed he was. He just looked like, yeah, he was just chilled all the time, but he could really, really fight. He was tough, strong punches, good throws, good submissions. Yeah, he really had it all for a heavyweight. And he wasn't a massive heavyweight. It was about 105 kilos. He had a bit of a podge. I got a picture of him recently. I bumped into him in a lift in Saudi. And yeah, he's a pretty small guy, not a big guy. So yeah, crazy what he's achieved. For me, Fedor, definitely the heavyweight GOAT. Right, before we go on to the GOAT of all GOATs, regardless of weight class, let's talk about the women's division. So we'll do a women's pound for pound GOAT. Women's MMA, absolutely huge now, and I think we've all got to give credit to Ronda Rousey. She put women's MMA on the map. So many people, so many women got interested in MMA because of Ronda Rousey. And yeah, obviously now she's in the WWE. I don't know if she's still wrestling in there, but yeah, she did great things for bringing more eyes to women's MMA, both male and female eyes. Men wanted to watch her as well, so yeah, she did a lot of great things. Holly Holm, again, great things. But for me, some of the top fighters when we're talking pound for pound, one of them that I really like is Valentina Shevchenko. So I actually, when I was at Tiger Muay Thai, so I won the Tiger Muay Thai tryouts in 2012. It was December 2012, and I believe it was then when I first met Valentina. She was at Tiger, and she was training, and I remember actually grappling with her. We were in a grappling class together, and I remember grappling with her, and she was a beginner really. She was pretty raw, and she was with a coach. There was a bit of a language barrier, and I remember people trying to help her and stuff, and people saying, "Oh, this girl's good." And then I remember leaving the jiu-jitsu class, and she went straight from jiu-jitsu to a private with the Thai, and she got in the ring and started hitting pads, and she was absolutely on fire hitting the pads, and I'm like, wow, she is really good. So yeah, it was great to see her back in the day, and then obviously see her now. So yeah, in terms of my favourite, is probably Valentina Shevchenko. I'm a big fan. But in terms of the women's GOAT, pound for pound GOAT, I think it has to be Amanda Nunes, the Lioness. Yeah, she's been in there with everybody. She's beat everybody. And I think it cannot be denied that, yeah, she is the female GOAT, Amanda Nunes. Okay, so we've got the GOATs in every single weight division, but who is the ultimate GOAT? Who is the greatest MMA fighter of all time, regardless of weight? For me, it has to be GSP. George St. Pierre, for me, is the GOAT. I think the argument comes down to probably three people, and it comes down to GSP, Anderson Silva, and John Jones. They're the kind of three. Obviously, with Anderson, the losses later in his career, um, you know, kind of retract a little bit from that legendary status. Maybe he should have retired a little bit earlier. Um, Obviously, with John Jones, unbeaten. I say unbeaten. He has got the one loss on his record from the downward elbows, which are now legal. For me, that should just be a no contest or something. That shouldn't even be a loss on his record. So we'll consider John Jones unbeaten. And then, like I said before, GSP, only 2 defeats, and he came back and he avenged those losses. So, yeah, I think if we can get Anderson Silva out of that equation, and it comes down to GSP and John Jones. Again, I've spoke about John Jones not being a good person outside of fighting, where GSP, for me, is a good person outside of fighting. So has that swayed me a little bit? Possibly, but people will say to me, no, you need to remove that. You need to remove the man and let's talk about the fighter. So let's do it. Let's talk about the fighter. For me, John Jones, super athletic. And I think a lot of his entire game, he can get away with things. He can get away with mistakes because of his athleticism. Whereas I think GSP is a little bit more of a thinker, and I think that he's the kind of guy who tries to not make mistakes, and he's always striving to improve. So think of it this way. Think about if GSP and John Jones were the same weight. Let's call them both middleweights. Yeah, so John Jones has come down, GSP's gone up. I mean, don't even think of it like that. Just think of it as they're both the same weight, regardless of what weight that is. They're both the same weight. I think that if they fought, that Jones would probably beat him the first time. And he would cause GSP problems with his athleticism. But I think GSP would go away, and I think he would come back with a better game plan. And I think that he would beat Jones. And I think if they fought again a third time, if there was, I base it on this: if there was a trilogy, GSP would win. Jones would win the first fight, GSP would win the second, and he'd close the trilogy with a win. For me, I think GSP has got the mind, he's got the work ethic, he's got the full package. Again, take him whatever he's like outside of MMA. Like I say, I think he's a good man, but take that away. I think in MMA, he's got the ability, the skill, the ethic, and the brain to get the win over Bones. So yeah, that is why I choose GSP as my GOAT, and he is one of my favourite fighters as well. So being a welterweight, when I was at my peak, I used to look at GSP and try and model myself on him. So yeah, that is my list of GOATs. Please let me know in the comments who your GOAT is. See if you can give me every weight division, your women's GOAT, and give me your pound for pound GOAT as well. And let's compare. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if there's anybody I've missed. Yeah, just comment, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will be back soon. I'm going to put another video up about the history of Vale Tudo because I got a good response to that. So I'm going to delve into a little bit of the history of the Gracie family and how they started. So that's coming up soon. But yeah, that's it from me. Yeah, let me know who the GOAT is, and I will see you soon.